Democrat plan. The Republican and Democrat national conventions are over, and we're entering the final 2-month stretch before the 2020 presidential election. Joe Biden gave a speech in the city of Pittsburg on August 31st. This Saturday's speech is going to define his campaign for better or for worse, and I thought it might be interesting to examine the premises he outlines in this speech, courtesy of this transcript from Rev.com. The job of a president is to tell it straight from the shoulder, tell the truth, to be candid, to face facts, to lead, not to incite. He means incite to violence. The incumbent president is incapable of telling us the truth, incapable of facing the facts, and incapable of healing. He doesn't want to shed light, he wants to generate heat, and he's stoking violence in our cities. Since the death of George Floyd, the Democratic Party has had a united front to excuse, encourage violent riots, arson, looting, and the pulling down of public statues by Democrat mobs. Democrat mayors encouraged every bit of violence from leftists, anarchists, Antifa, BLM, and it appears to be a coordinated effort between Democrat mayors of these cities where these riots are permitted. The mayors ordered the police departments to stand down. They ordered fire departments to stand down. They wanted to maximize the destruction in their own cities since the death of George Floyd. After some problems with coordination with Democrat governors, they appeared to have worked out a coordinated front. The plan by the Democratic Party, they plan to sock American taxpayers with the bill to repair all the damage that Democrat rioters have carried out. American taxpayers are supposed to pay to fix all this. American taxpayers are supposed to pay for all of the stolen merchandise from looted stores. Now, the people who actually did the looting, who actually did the arson, the destruction, they don't have to pay anything. They don't have to pay any price at all. There are no criminal penalties when you're expressing yourself in a violent manner for the Democratic Party. Numerous members of Joe Biden's presidential campaign staff have donated to a fund for bail for people involved in violent riots and protests. This speech by Joe Biden at the end of August indicates a major shift by the Democratic Party. Someone showed them the poll numbers that looting, burning, and destroying Democrat-run cities is not a winner for the presidential election. I don't know why they needed a focus group to tell them this. They should have known this back when they first started encouraging these acts of violence by Democrat mobs. So the new tactic is shown here by Joe Biden. The new tactic is to say Trump was at these riots. So Trump looted the Target store in Minneapolis where George Floyd died. Trump burned down buildings across the country. Trump was even sitting on top of those statues and pulling the statues down with his massive weight. So Trump is the one who has done all of this, despite the fact that the Democratic Party has repeatedly rejected any offers of federal assistance by President Trump with federal police officers or the National Guard deployments to curtail the unchecked violence in Democrat-run cities. If Joe Biden's party had not actively resisted all offers of assistance by President Trump month after month to stop the destruction, this change in tactics here by Joe Biden would be perfectly fine. Unfortunately, every Democrat mayor in these cities that has been destroyed and burned with the active participation of the Democratic Party officials, every one of them lectured us long and loud on YouTube videos, on Skype, about how much they hated President Trump. They hated President Trump so much that they would get on their videos and denounce Trump rather than ask him for federal assistance. Pure insanity, where you allow your political dislike of the current president to prevent your community from being protected. So this new angle from Joe Biden, from the time that the first protest of George Floyd's death started, the Democratic Party encouraged violent mobs for the two purposes. One, like I said, to bill the U.S. taxpayer for all damages through federal reconstruction funds. And number two, they would figure out a way to personally blame President Trump for Democrat riots and drive President Trump from office. Now, it doesn't matter if a nonpartisan virus has nothing to do with who is president. They tried to use that to drive Trump from office. It doesn't matter if Democrats encouraged these mobs to destroy their own cities. They somehow saw this as being something they could connect to President Trump sitting in Washington. So if a mob is attempting to burn down a federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon, somehow President Trump reached all the way out from Washington, D.C. to make that happen. And that is the premise of Joe Biden's entire speech here. So let's continue. Violence we've seen again and again and again of unwarranted police shooting, excessive force, 7 bullets in the back of Jacob Blake, knee on the neck of George Floyd, violence of extremists and opportunists, right-wing militias. Now this sentence here is complete insanity. The knee on the neck of George Floyd was by the Minneapolis Police Department, which was hired and trained by Democratic politicians from top to bottom. They had a Democrat mayor in Minneapolis, Democrat city council, and a Democrat governor. It's interesting to note that not a single unplanned, chaotic protest across the country ever called for those two officials to resign. No reporter ever asked the mayor of Minneapolis if he should resign over the death of George Floyd. No reporter ever asked the governor of Minnesota if he should resign over this violence. Isn't that funny? Democrat officials do not get asked that question. And it raises the question if any of these protests were random events. Why is it that not one nationwide protest demanded the resignations of the political civilian officials involved at the scene of the crime? So Joe Biden here, this is an amazing conflation. He starts by talking about the knee on the neck of George Floyd and closes with right-wing militias. I don't know of any right-wing militia that looted a Target. I don't know of any right-wing militia that burned down city blocks. I don't know of any right-wing militia which is looting stores across the country and encouraging attacks on police. So Joe Biden is attempting to conflate here violence on both sides, supposedly, from the left and right. And the news media immediately picked up on this theme. If you watched the news media coverage in the following weeks since Joe Biden's speech, the network news angle is that there's equal blame from right and left mobs of causing all this destruction. The problem is the media spin on that is basically telling us not to believe our lying eyes. Democrat political officials encourage Democrat-run mobs to carry out acts of mayhem, violence, looting, and burning and destruction. No Republicans in sight. Specifically, what Joe Biden is attempting to lead up here is to personally blame President Donald Trump for every single act of violence carried out by Democrat mobs. As long as Trump is president, Democrat mobs will continue waging this sort of violence. And that was the Democrat plan since the first protest of George Floyd. Maybe it wasn't something they initially had worked out at that time, but the plan was eventually agreed upon in secret by Democrat mayors and governors and those Democrats in Washington, D.C. The plan was figure out a way to take the energy of violent Democrat protests and use it to drive Donald Trump from office. I want to make it absolutely clear, so I'm going to be very clear about all of this. Rioting is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. Setting fires is not protesting. None of this is protesting. It's lawlessness, plain and simple, and those who do it should be prosecuted. Violence will not bring change. It will only bring destruction. It's wrong in every way. It divides instead of unites, destroys businesses, only hurts the working families that serve the community. It makes things worse across the board, not better. Now, what's important about this paragraph from Joe Biden? Not one word along any of these lines was spoken at the Democratic National Convention. Not one speaker spoke of the violence going on during the convention by Democrat mobs. What is the reason for this change here? And notice he spoke about how this has destroyed businesses. Now here, Joe Biden actually paid attention to something John Lewis said just before he died. In one of his final interviews, Representative John Lewis said he disagreed with the violent mobs that he was seeing taking place across the country. The Democratic Party ignored the advice of John Lewis and embraced the violent mobs and said we must listen and accept all of their violence for the coming revolution in this country to make America more like Venezuela or Cuba. The Democrat leaders excused and exonerated every action by the violent mobs. Fires are burning, and we have a president who fans the flames rather than fighting the flames. That's obviously not borne out by the facts. At every time we've had violent unrest in Democrat-controlled cities, Donald Trump has contacted the mayors and the governors in question and offered federal assistance. And in most cases, he's been publicly rejected. Democrat leaders rejected any federal assistance because they believed they could demagogue about Trump's troops instead of actually assisting their communities. Demagoguing against President Trump was deemed more important by the Democratic Party than protecting the businesses and families and homes of their own communities. But we must not burn, we have to build. This president long ago forfeited any moral leadership in this country. The overall tone of the speech is that you would almost think Joe Biden is reading old newspapers from the 2016 campaign. He can't stop the violence because for years he's fomented it. He may believe mouthing the words law and order makes him strong, but his failure to call on his own supporters to stop acting as an armed militia in this country shows how weak he is. Does anyone believe there will be less violence in America if Donald Trump is elected? Someone told Joe Biden that all of the looting, rioting, and burning and pulling down of statues was conducted by Trump supporters acting as an armed militia. Now, why would Joe Biden say this? The Democrat plan basically called on Democrat mobs to loot and burn and destroy for month after month, as we've seen through the spring and into the summer. Finally, ordinary American citizens, when they see these mobs marching into their neighborhoods, have taken up arms to defend their homes, their families, and their businesses. This apparently was the photographic imagery, the news footage, that the Democratic Party and their news media was waiting for. To take all this violence instigated by Democrat radicals, and then because a few people stand in protest of them with some Trump flags and hats, suddenly the problem are right-wing militias, as he said earlier, and then here he says Trump armed militia. He wraps it up by saying, does anyone believe there will be less violence in America if Donald Trump is reelected? Well, that's an interesting point, because if we had a Democrat president at this moment, none of these riots would have taken place, and they wouldn't have gone on as long even if they did, because the goal of driving a Republican president from office would not be the case if there was a Democrat in office. So these riots are all completely artificial, ginned up and generated by the Democratic Party, who believe they can use them to drive Donald Trump from office. We need justice in America. We need safety in America. We're facing multiple crises that under Donald Trump have kept multiplying. COVID, Trump had nothing to do with that. Economic devastation. Well, if you lock down the country and people can't go to their jobs, that is economic devastation. Again, that's because of the virus, not Donald Trump. Unwarranted police violence. As I've just outlined, the police department in Minneapolis was hired and trained by Democrat politicians. So Donald Trump didn't hire those police officers. Donald Trump did not put his knee on George Floyd's neck. So what is Biden talking about? And then he says white nationalists. Now this is the third reference to what Biden assumes are Trump supporters. First he said right-wing militias, then he said armed militias, and he specified that they were Trump supporters. Now he's saying white nationalists. A reckoning on race and declining faith in the birth of the right American future. This might be a bad transcript. He might have been saying declining faith in the American birthright, but it's still gobbledygook. If Joe Biden didn't solve racial issues in his 8 years as vice president, why should he be given the chance to fix it now? If I was debating Joe Biden, I'd also ask him why he wasn't the right man for the job in 2016. Hillary Clinton was the right man for the job in 2016. Why was Joe Biden sitting in his rocking chair if he was the right man at that time? And why is he suddenly the right man now, 4 years later? I thought Hillary was supposed to be the historic first female president. We're still waiting for that historic first female president. Joe Biden has gotten in the way of that goal. We were told that goal was the most important thing facing America 4 years ago. So shouldn't Kamala Harris be at the top of the ticket? The common threat, the incumbent president who makes things worse, not better. An incumbent president who sows chaos rather than providing order. Donald Trump is the common threat to America. Trump is more of a threat than a virus, or Democrat mobs burning entire neighborhoods and destroying and looting whole city blocks. Trump didn't do any of that, but Biden is claiming Trump is the bigger threat. The auto worker in Michigan who still makes the best automobile in the world, single mom in Ohio, working 3 jobs just to stay afloat, who will do anything for her child. Retired veteran in Florida who gave everything he had to this country. A salesperson who just lost their job. Just remember that stuff about the jobs. No matter your color, no matter your zip code, no matter your politics, I'm in this campaign for you. Now, if you recall what Biden had just previously said 3 times, that Trump supporters are white nationalists, right-wing militias, and armed militia groups. So no matter your politics, but Biden has just said that if you are a Trump supporter, you are a white nationalist. Mr. Biden, it's insulting to say that the people who support Trump are white nationalists. That's not the case. Ask yourself, do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really? Well, Joe Biden just claimed that the rioters were Trump supporters. I want a safe America, safe from COVID, safe from crime and looting, safe from racially motivated violence. I don't think he's referring to the Black Lives Matters violent mobs. Let me be crystal clear, safe from 4 more years of Donald Trump. Donald Trump looks at this violence and he sees a political lifeline. Now the specific wording on this sentence is a hint, it's a clue. The Democrat plan was to encourage this violence month after month in cities across the country. Their goal was to bring this to a head close to the election and say that Donald Trump is the one who is using this violence for a political lifeline. This was all focus group tested and polled to say that Joe Biden will be our savior, but only if Donald Trump is driven from office. Having failed to protect this nation from the virus that has killed more than 180,000 Americans so far, think about what Biden is saying. Recall that in 2009, all of America united behind President Obama to battle H1N1 swine flu, which was widely reported on all the networks as coming across the open porous border from Mexico into America. The media didn't have a open borders preference at that time. All of America united to fight this common ailment. Swine flu affected us all. It wasn't partisan. A virus is not partisan. Because of President Obama's slow response to fighting the swine flu, over 12,000 Americans died as diagnosed from swine flu. It took the President Obama 6 months to declare a national emergency. No one blamed President Obama. No Republican made a political issue over how Obama treated the swine flu, because it would be silly to make a political issue over a non-partisan virus. But here, Joe Biden has made this the centerpiece of his campaign, to personally blame Trump for every death by coronavirus, or quote-unquote coronavirus-related mortality. A Trump advisor, I guess, says the more chaos, violence, the better it is for Trump's re-election. That's literally true. Democrat politicians encouraged and rewarded rioters with free stuff. They could loot anything they wanted. They could destroy anything they wanted with no criminal penalties of any kind. America has been watching that month after month, and they are switching to vote for Trump. The simple truth is Donald Trump failed to protect America, and he attributes all this violence to Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump adds fuel to every fire because he refuses to even acknowledge that there's a racial justice problem in America, because he won't stand up to any form of violence. Again, the factual record is every American saw every Democrat mayor with a camera streaming their outrage that Trump wanted to send in federal assistance to stop the rioting. You can't undo that, Joe Biden. You can't erase what happened. We have mayor after mayor, governor after governor from the Democratic Party rejecting any federal assistance in maintaining law and order. He's got no problem with right-wing militia, white supremacists, and vigilantes with assault weapons, often better armed than the police. Just an aside, Joe, if the police aren't armed as well as civilian Americans, you need to increase police funding, not cut police funding, as you promised to do during the Democrat primaries. You're a right-wing militia, you're a white supremacist, you're a vigilante with assault weapons. The timing of this speech is that they were waiting for images to show people defending their homes with weapons legally purchased against marching Democrat mobs coming to burn and loot and destroy. More and more Americans are standing up to people coming into their neighborhood to burn it down. Someone in the Democrat Party said, we're getting enough footage now of people resisting the Antifa and Black Lives Matter mobs. Let's start saying that Trump's supporters are the ones causing the violence. And ergo, we have Biden's speech here. And because tens of millions of Americans simply don't trust this president to respect their rights, to hear their concerns, or to protect them. So, if you simply have the fear that Donald Trump isn't hearing your concerns, it's okay to loot a Target store. It's okay to beat people unconscious to the point of death because you're concerned Trump isn't listening to you. It's okay to burn down entire city blocks because you have a fear of Trump's not listening to your concerns. This is nonsense. Fear of Trump did not burn or loot or smash statues or any of these crazy things that Democrat mobs have been doing month after month to our country. When President Obama and I were in the White House, we had to defend federal property. We did it. We didn't see it. You didn't see us whipping up fears around the deployment of secret federal troops. Actually, that would be Democrat mayors and governors whipping up fears about Trump's troops. Trump has acted precisely as the president should do, protect federal property such as courthouses. And here, Biden weirdly makes the comparison that he and President Obama did the same thing. The only difference was you didn't have Democrat mayors demagoguing that assistance. You didn't have a news media editorializing against protecting federal buildings. It's so bizarre because if you remember back in the 1990s, Tim McVeigh blew up a federal courthouse. Everyone condemned him. He was sentenced to death. Here, where Antifa and Democrat mobs are actively trying to burn down federal courthouses, the Democrats come down on the side of those trying to burn down the courthouses and blow them up, and to kill the personnel within. What is it that's changed other than Democrat hatred of President Trump? There is no other difference. But it's an insane switch around. And now the Democrat mob are heroes for trying to blow up federal courthouses with people inside. It makes absolutely no sense. It's evil in both cases, Democrats. But Trump doesn't see himself as president for all America. Well, actually he does. He believes the safety of every American in Democrat-run cities and states is his responsibility, which is why he's spoken so frequently on offering assistance to these mayors and governors who have rejected federal assistance in protecting the homes and communities that are currently under assault by Democrat mobs. He says here, I've spoken to George Floyd's family. I know their pain. So their pain would be that Democrat officials in Minneapolis and Minnesota allowed George Floyd to die. Why aren't those Democrat officials being held to justice? There is no justice, apparently. If we're to believe Biden here, he says, I believe it can bring these folks fighting for racial justice to the table. If there is not enough racial justice in cities that are run by Democrats. For example, Minnesota has been run by the Democratic Party since 1932. In Joe Biden's world, the problems created by racial injustice in places run by Democrats is to vote for more Democrats. So we need more Democrats to solve the problems that were created by Democrats. Okay, thanks, Joe. It's okay, baby. Yeah, I know. Joe Biden makes me cry, too. He makes me cry, too. Joe Biden says, I've worked with police in this country for many years. I know most cops are good, decent people. So why did you attack the police forces and presume that they are guilty before they're proved innocent, as you just did repeatedly in this speech? I'm confident I can bring police to the table as well. And what? Blame them first without hearing their side? That's been the Democrat attitude this entire year. But I wouldn't be looking to use the United States military against our own people. Now, Joe Biden just said minutes ago that he and President Obama used those same forces to protect federal buildings. So he's contradicting himself. So what is the problem? What has Trump done wrong? Oh, Trump has used divisive language. Well, Mr. Biden, sometimes a president has to talk sternly, and if people are breaking businesses and harming people, you have to deal firmly with such people. I'd be looking to lower the temperature in this country, not to raise it. I'd be looking to unite the nation. Then why hasn't Joe Biden or the entire Democratic Party done any of that this year? They seek to divide this nation to force Donald Trump out of office. Again, I don't know how they think riots by Democrat-led mobs will force Trump from office, but that seems to be the Democrat plan. When I was vice president, violent crime fell 15% in this country. Folks, can you think of anything more useless than a vice president? What on earth did Joe Biden have to do with anything that happened during Obama's 8 years? Nothing. He sat there and occasionally they rolled him out to make a speech. This is kind of funny. We did it with Democrat mayors in most of the major cities in this country. The murder rate right now is up 26% across the nation under Donald Trump. Yes, because Democrat-led mobs are murdering and killing without reprisals. Police departments are underfunded. Police are ordered not to patrol. And in many Democrat cities have canceled bail requirements. So criminals can loot and steal and murder, and they're let go with no bail. That's not Donald Trump's fault. He personally blames President Trump for any coronavirus cases in this country. Okay, yeah, what did the Affordable Care Act do to stop the coronavirus to entering this country from China? Absolutely nothing. And they've accused Republicans of defunding Social Security since going back, I think, to Reagan. It's never happened. Well, Social Security's been insolvent since they expanded it to cover everyone and not just widows, as FDR first created Social Security for. Joe Biden is all over the place. The fear that reigns under this president doesn't stop at our shores. The Kremlin has put bounties on the heads of American soldiers. Actually, CNN found out the truth. It was Iran who paid the Taliban bounties for our soldiers in Afghanistan. As a direct consequence of this, President Trump ordered the elimination of Iran General Soleimani, who was in Iraq illegally to carry out more violence against American soldiers and innocent Muslims in Iraq. So CNN revealed what Joe Biden, apparently no one bothered telling Biden of the update. Again, this is an indication that Biden is simply getting his news read to him by other people. It's been reported that Russian forces just attacked American troops in Syria, injuring our service members. Did you hear the president say a single word? Did he lift one finger? Now, this is a great ability of the Democratic Party. They can attack Trump for being a crazed warmonger who's going to start World War III. When that doesn't happen, they say Trump hasn't responded forcefully enough with other bad actors in the world. So the great thing about being a challenger is you can attack the sitting president from 360 degrees. Never before has an American president played such a subservient role to a Russian leader. Now that's interesting because we all remember President Obama drawing a red line across Syria, who was being funded and armed by the Russian government, their close allies. And Obama and Joe Biden caved to Russia over their red line in Syria. So Obama was subservient to Russia. Obama and Biden were subservient to China with bad trade deals. Obama and Biden were subservient to Iran, bringing them plane loads of cash to get them to the negotiating table. So what Biden is saying here, it looks like somebody else wrote it for him. It's not only dangerous, it's humiliating and embarrassing for the rest of the world to see. It weakens us. Really? Because countries like Russia and China seem to prefer Joe Biden and would prefer him as the person negotiating across the table from them. And you can see this was written by a focus group. President Obama used to be called the bystander president. And now here Joe Biden says, Donald Trump's role as a bystander in his own presidency extends to the economic plan and pain. He's basically taking something that was used to describe Obama's 8 years as president as a bystander, just witnessing world events, not really reacting or acting. Does he not understand and see the tens of millions of people who've had to file for unemployment this year so far? Remember the earlier part that Joe Biden focused on people losing their jobs. Stop the Depression in 2009. Joe Biden didn't have a single thing to do with our nation's economic recovery. And in fact, this was something stated at the start of Trump's first term. Trump took a good economy and drove it back into the ditch. Now remember, just prior to the coronavirus outbreak, every Democrat with a mouth was saying that the beautiful economy under Donald Trump was a continuation of the Obama economy. So can Joe Biden explain how Democrats simultaneously said that Donald Trump drove the good economy into the ditch, and Democrats also said that Trump's great economy just prior to the coronavirus was Obama's great economy? You can't tell us that it was a great economy and all due to Obama and then say Trump drove it into a ditch through his failure to get COVID under control. If you remember, it was Democrat-run states like New York that forced coronavirus victims into nursing homes, and they ordered the nursing homes not to tell residents or their families that there were people with COVID symptoms in those nursing homes. They made it a criminal penalty if the nursing homes told their residents this. Governor Cuomo of New York had the nation's highest rates of infections and deaths. So what's nice here for Joe Biden is he can blame Trump for all the deaths and misery from the coronavirus based on the decisions of Democrat governors and Democrat officials in hard-hit areas. It's not just that Donald Trump is to blame for his own policies. They can blame Donald Trump for the policies of Democrat governors like Governor Cuomo of New York. Pretty slick. And he had to change his mind here on fracking. I don't really care about that. That's just to get the votes in Pennsylvania and Ohio, as we know. Our current president wants you to live in fear. He advertises himself as a figure of order. The problem with this sentence is that every time a Democrat mayor or Democrat governor has accepted the offer of federal aid and National Guard troops from President Trump, the riots stop that day. The day that National Guardsmen deploy on those streets, that the federal police roll in, the looting stops, the arson stops, the violence stops, the pulling down of statues stops. So Joe Biden has been directly contradicted by reality here, by his claim that Trump wants you to live in fear. It's Biden who wants you to stay locked up in your home and your schools locked up and stay in fear that way. We want to send our children safely back to school. If you may remember, back in July, Joe and Jill Biden spoke from Joe's basement on the need to keep children locked up in their homes and to not reopen schools. The teachers' unions were ordered to go out and protest. You saw it on all the local newscasts of local teachers holding up signs saying that the classroom should not be their gravestone. They would die if they had to go back to the classroom. This was the message pushed by the Joe Biden campaign in July. Joe and Jill Biden said before America that they wanted to spend billions of dollars on remote learning and keep America's school children locked up forever. That was their message in July. Someone showed them poll numbers that this was unpopular. So by August, Joe Biden was suddenly speaking publicly for the need to return children to physical classrooms with real teachers. Humorously, no one told the teachers' unions of this switch from July to August. The teachers' unions were still ordering their teachers out to protest and scream and kick their feet about having to go back to the classroom. So that was an interesting switch there. But in this speech, if you look at this overall, Joe Biden says that Trump's inaction led to more coronavirus deaths. He wanted Trump to act sooner in locking down the country. This ignores the simple fact that the president is not a dictator. Donald Trump and the CDC can offer advice to states on locking down and when to reopen, but it's simply advice. Only a dictator can order the entire country to wear a face mask outdoors. Only a dictator can order the entire country to lock down. Joe Biden's complaints are that Trump did not act like a dictator. That's the precise opposite of the complaints the Democratic Party has had about Trump since day one. They said he's too much of a dictator. And this also ignores the fact that Donald Trump, in contradiction to what Joe Biden has always said, let's take a look here. For some reason, Joe Biden left out the word science out of his entire speech. Joe Biden's one of his main complaints that has been consistent through this year is that Donald Trump doesn't believe in science, Donald Trump ignores science, and Donald Trump did not use science, and that's why he should be criticized for the coronavirus response. The problem for Joe Biden is that Donald Trump followed the science. He held daily press briefings with the Centers for Disease Control. This is the same CDC that worked for President Obama. It's the same Dr. Fauci that worked for President Obama that Donald Trump listens to. It's the same Dr. Birx that worked for President Obama that President Trump listens to. So you may not know Trump followed the science because most news networks refuse to cover or carry the CDC press briefings live. This is where it comes in, where you need to go and educate yourself on what President Trump actually says and does. Watch his full speeches and his full daily press briefings. Go online and watch the full thing. Don't let Joe Biden's news media edit the reality for you like they've edited reality for Joe Biden. So Joe Biden's entire message here is almost entirely focused on how Donald Trump is the most evil person who ever lived. Even if that were true, most successful presidential campaigns will focus on telling you their positive vision for America, what they're going to do to help the American people get back on their feet. You can see here clearly Joe Biden never had that as his focus in this speech. His speech is Donald Trump is going to destroy the country, and the riots will only stop if we get rid of Donald Trump as president. And it's weird. Joe Biden's complaints here look like they were written by someone who read the headlines back in 2016, 2017, 2018. It's as if whoever wrote this speech had no idea of Donald Trump's great handling of the economy. And another thing Biden complained about was that Donald Trump did not lock down the nation sooner. This is an odd complaint because Joe Biden said that Donald Trump's initial lockdown from travel to and from China was racist and xenophobic. So it was Now Joe Biden pretends that we don't have access to watch him saying this. He said it on tape. It's on video. So he pretends that he didn't say Donald Trump was acting too soon. And the mantra from the Biden campaign ever since then is the mantra is Donald Trump didn't act soon enough. But we've got Joe Biden on tape saying the exact opposite, because Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi did not comprehend the true danger of the coronavirus. Trump did. So the division here that has been inflicted on America in 2020 is artificial. It was ginned up by the Democratic Party. This was the Democrat plan to divide and polarize America for the benefit of the Democratic Party. Bear that in mind when you go to vote this November.